Boys, we going live?
Are live.
All right. Sorry about the delay there, guys. Welcome into the roundtable. Today is Wednesday, November 22nd. We got big man on campus, Ian Cameron, Donnie right side joining us in just a second. We'll be hitting on some rivalry college football, good NFL card as well. Got best bets, little college basketball, and 60 seconds with Ian Cameron. So good show. Go right around the horn here. Just two guys. Hopefully Donnie is in just a second. What's up, chat box? Make sure to chime in on what you guys want to hear about, and we'll start off with big man on campus. Find him on Twitter at Jeff Nadeau. Jeff, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Drew. Good to be back with you on a roundtable here as we head into Thanksgiving. College football, a lot going on, so excited to be on today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Excited to get your opinion. I know you're red hot in the college hardwoods, so we'll get to
The
that in just
person
a
whom you're
second.
trying.
Find him on Twitter at Babano. Ian, what's up, bud?
I'm doing good, Drew. I hope everybody's not sick of me yet. I'm sure you are. We just finished the NHL Ice Guys show and ready to talk on a wide potpourri array of sports, not just hockey, probably very little hockey here, but looking forward to it. I mean, it's a big week of football, college football rivalry weekend. The playoff picture is going to get even more interesting this weekend. So lots to talk about. Excited to do it as always. One of my favorite shows.
Yeah, we're pretty sick of you,
Absolutely.
actually.
Of course.
Ian,
I'm,
well, guys, hey, we got NFL on slate usually for the roundtable, but with Donnie not here, he's kind of Mr. NFL. What do you say we go college football first? You all right with that?
Whatever you guys want to do.
absolutely. Yep.
Let's get into it. Jeff, do you have a bet on or fade teams you're looking to really bet on or fade down the stretch here?
Um, yeah, I mean, look, I think the main important thing is when you're capping college football, kind of stuff that you got to live by, make sure you know what games mean stuff and what don't. For instance, there's a game UConn Cincinnati. Game means nothing to either team. You look at some of the action games last night. They didn't mean anything to either team. It's really about pride, the scenarios
The
that they're
person
playing
whom you're
in, that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily capping strategy, but one that I've always looked at, kind of fading Oregon State. The Beavers are 3-8 this year against the spread. Really struggle to get stops on the defensive side. One of the worst total defenses in the country, and they're really hamstrung offensively. I know they have a new coach there, but you got to wonder at this point, what are we playing for? Kind of things like that. Just trying to find teams, maybe that are, just kind of not playing for anything, or they're playing for some kind of bragging rights or that kind of thing, or bowl game opportunities. That's obviously hugely important with one game left. So just making sure you're looking at scenarios and that kind of thing, and you'll be just fine.
Okay,
Yeah, and I was
cool.
just to follow up on that. Yeah, scenarios. Who can qualify for a bowl? Who's looking to win their division, win their conference in terms of the standings? Those are things you want to be aware of. But also in these rivalry games, even when you're talking about horrible, horrible teams this year that have had miserable, dismal seasons, they are likely going to be getting a bargain in the point spread with those teams because they're so bad. If there's one week, even these low lifes in college football are going to show up, it would be in a rivalry setting such as this to give you one inspired effort to end the season, even if it's been a bad season. So you just got to be careful. I find it very tricky, especially in these perceived mismatch games on rivalry weekend, to lay big points with the superior team, even against a much inferior team, because oftentimes you're going to get a situation where that inferior team, for as bad as they show up on rivalry weekend. And I've seen crazy things happen on a weekend like this where the bad team sometimes catches the good team, kind of overlooking them. So you got to beware of these dogs of the college football world here that sometimes, even though they're in the midst of a bad season, tend to sometimes show up that last rivalry game to end it.
Hey, well, there he is. He just joined us. Donnie Rightside, Mr. NFL himself. Find him on Twitter at RightSideVP. Donnie, how you doing today, buddy?
Hey, doing good, man. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those days where, you come down in the office, you're ready to go. It's about 10 minutes before, and you get the Windows update that crosses your screen. It says, do you want to update now or do you want to update later? And you put, I want to update later. Well, later to them meant like 2 minutes later than what I wanted. So here we are. No shame. We're here ready to go, rocking and rolling.
All
Windows
right.
updates
Well,
piss me off too. You're preaching to the choir, Donnie. I feel your pain there. Ridiculous.
Hey, Donnie, we started off with a little college football because you weren't here for NFL. Should we keep going with that or
Yeah,
switch gears
yeah,
to the
we'll
NFL?
go around the back with NFL. Yeah, finish up on college football. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go right around the horn. Let's start off with a big one, the Iron Bowl. We got Auburn, Alabama in Jordan Hare. Looks like we got a home underdog, and hey, this is a big game. Obviously, a lot on the stake for both teams. The SEC West Championship, a playoff spot. Some people saying Alabama's already in. Let's just go around with any thoughts on betting the game, and who you think will win outright. And any totals opinions. Jeff, you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, I listen, I don't like to bet against Alabama generally. Just not something I'm really in the business to do. I mean, we all know Nick Saban's a genius, but I kind of like Auburn in this game, frankly. I mean, they're at home. I think they were really impressive beating Georgia. That was an eye opener for me. You wondered how good this team was, but beating Georgia was pretty impressive. This whole rivalry, it's fascinating as far as you know people just the whole I never really knew how tremendous the rivalry was in Alabama until I watched some things about it. It's pretty amazing. It's there, but it's just I mean, you literally from birth. It's like being a fanatic, like in Europe. It's amazing. This is awesome. It's a great place to. It kind of would be great if this was the decider in the SEC, really. But yeah, look, I like what Stidham's done this year. I've been impressed by him. He's been able to do some good things. They have a great run game. Their run defense is fantastic. You could put it right up with Alabama. And look, I still am concerned about, like Micah Fitzpatrick. I think he's going to play in this game, but you know, I think you're going to, his leg's going to need to be chopped off to not play in this. But you wonder how healthy he is. Sean Dion Hamilton hasn't played for some time. And look, I mean, I talked about this with Gabriel Morency. I mean, I w- I really thought Alabama should have lost that game to Mississippi State. Dan Mullen really gave them that game on the silver platter. I just think Auburn, this game will be decided within 3 points. It could be one of those where it kind of gets you bought in and you just take it and they win by 10, Alabama. But I like Auburn. I'm impressed with what they've done this year. I think getting 4.5 points is at home, probably the right way to go here. But I don't know if I'll be betting this game, Drew. These are one of those games you usually just kind of watch and enjoy. This is college football right here.
Ian Cameron, you agreeing with Jeff, liking War Eagle on the plains?
I have to lean Auburn a little bit. Again, I like it. I don't love it because it's Alabama still in a price range where they're not normally used to being in, where you just basically got to ask them to win the game by a little bit of enough margin to cash a ticket for their backers. But you look at Alabama and you start to look at their schedule. I mean, it's not been anything to write home about, especially in SEC season. Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, A&M, Arkansas has been a pathetic. Tennessee has been pathetic. LSU's been a disappointment. Which reminds me, we got to get an Eddie O impression before the show's over from Big Man. But Mississippi State, again, life and death to win that game, 31-24, a game they didn't exactly play great. You could argue that in SEC play, that's been their best and toughest game, maybe of all season for Alabama, outside of Florida State in the very first game of the season when DeAndre Francois got injured. And that's when Florida State season came unraveled. But to me, Auburn's faced a tougher schedule. They really have. I mean, you look at the Clemson game was a tough one for them. They also played Mississippi State, were much more convincing in beating Mississippi State than Alabama was. They played Georgia. Alabama has not played Georgia to this point in the season. So you look at Auburn, and that schedule that they've faced has been pretty tough. And then you start to dig into the statistics. Defensively, they're in Alabama's range, 4.4 yards per play allowed Auburn on defense compared to Alabama. 3.9, not a huge discrepancy there. And against a tougher schedule, Auburn did that as well. 3.1 yards per carry allowed for Auburn's defense compared to 2.7 yards per carry allowed by Alabama. But again, who had the tougher schedule throughout the course of the long season? Auburn did. So you start to measure up these two teams statistically. There's not a huge gap. Auburn did it against the, I think, tougher schedule. Jalen Hurts has had a good season, but I think even down the stretch, he's been outplayed a little bit by Jarrett Stidham, who's been very good. So this is not an easy price range for me to fade Alabama, but given the body of work from both of these programs and the line where it is, I've got to look toward Auburn plus the points here.
Donnie, I got a stat for you. The winner of the Iron Bowl has played for the national championship every year but one since 2009. You got any opinion on this game?
I love the game. I think it's awesome. I think Ian touched on exactly what should be reading when you're trying to cap this game or break it down. I mean, we all know Alabama, and sometimes you can just throw it, into the ring and say, yeah, it's Alabama. They have 5-star athletes. Doesn't matter who gets injured. Doesn't matter who's there. They're always ready to play. And yes, they've won every football game. But if you isolate their schedule, like Ian's talking about, I mean, who have we really? Oh, great, huge win for Florida State opening night. Who is Florida State at this point? You might even say that the Fresno State game was actually a pretty good victory, 41-10, turning out how Fresno State's played the rest of the year. But the Colorado State's decent football team, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, and look at the games where they go on the road where I don't want to say it's a great SEC team, but just a competent SEC football team. At Mississippi State, should have lost. 31-24, they pull out the win. At Texas A&M, who's no great team at all, 27-19. Auburn's a much better football team, and Auburn is battle-tested this year, and they're going to be playing at home. If this game was 3 or less, I definitely would be taking Alabama. But if you're looking at 4, 4.5, or 5, the public's still going to have its way as this game gets later in the week. I missed out on taking Auburn to beat Georgia with the line the way it was. I can see the same type of football game because Alabama, if you can get physical with them, they're not going to throw it out of the gym or, throw it out of the arena down there and just say, I'm just going to open it up and throw for 300 yards. They're more of play off of defense. And let's not forget, from opening day till now, it seems like each and every week, Alabama is losing a key starter or a foundation piece on that defense. I think Auburn's going to be giving them all hell in this football game. And folks, let's not forget about all the crazy endings and what goes on. The one thing that coming into this football game, if it's going to be a close one, Alabama will not make the field goals. That's a huge advantage. Just one. Give me Auburn with the 4.5.
I think Donnie makes a great point with this. I think if it's just 4.5, 5, that's kind of my way of thinking. I want to get the points in this matchup, and with the home team, I don't know that Donnie, if you were asked right now, do you trust that Jalen Hurts can throw his way to a football win? Do you think he can? I'm not really. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's a great. He runs with the ball. It's effective, but I like Stidham, frankly, from a quarterback perspective. I like Stidham. He's impressed me. He's played in bigger games at Baylor and even here at Auburn. I, I, I think whoever's getting the points here, that's what I'm taking. It's not going to be Alabama, so I'm going to take the 4.5. I think this game's decided within a field goal.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the exact same point, Jeff, that I was looking at as well. Because when you break it down, I just like the overall game plan and scheme of Auburn's offense compared to Alabama. Alabama works. Why? Because Saban's a genius on the defensive side of the football and says, I have a real athletic quarterback. If it's 3rd and 4, run me for a couple first downs. We're going to pound the football. We're going to play really good defense. We'll make you make the mistake. But I think Auburn's going to be able to press them. And again, it's tough. This is the Iron Bowl, man. This is what they gear up for each and every year. It's a tough environment to play, whether you're at Alabama or playing at Auburn at Jordan-Hare. It should be a really fun football game. It just boils down to me. If it's 3 or less, I'm probably leaning Alabama. But if you're going to tell me they're going to have to win by a touchdown on the road and cover with their horrific field goal kicking that they get seemingly every year in the biggest spots, you're going to have to score more touchdowns than field goals. Give me Auburn again.
Donnie, you bring up the fact it's good atmosphere in Tuscaloosa or in Auburn. How about the fact this is in Jordan-Hare Stadium? I think you can make the argument this is the toughest game left on Alabama's schedule, no matter what happens. Given the playoff, given the SEC championship, I think this is the toughest game left on their schedule.
Definitely is. I mean, it definitely is. I think Auburn, I mean, and you look at the list, I know this isn't that big a deal just because these are different teams, but, Auburn hasn't had, they haven't played particularly well in this game the last couple of years, really. Crazy things happen in this game, and I definitely agree it's the toughest game they have yet to play because, I don't think any team out of the other side of this conference in the SEC title game, I mean, that's virtually a home game seemingly for Alabama every year. They don't ever lose that game. So yeah, this is definitely the toughest game. I don't think that'll be any argument here.
And guys, we're also bringing up some good facts. But what about Alabama's argument? You can make the argument for Bama that Nick Saban has extra time to prepare. What, they played Mercer last week, so we're betting against Nick Saban with extra time to prepare. Is that scaring you?
No, it doesn't, because I remember Urban Meyer and Cardale Jones wiping their asses on Alabama that year with extra time to prepare for Nick Saban. So I don't want to hear Nick Saban with extra time to prepare. He can be beaten if the other team is better and can get the job done. So yeah, usually he's good in that spot, no question. But that's one example of how he is not infallible to this kind of situation.
Yeah, again,
I think. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, no, I was just wanting to make this clear. I always hear how, like, will coaches have extra time to prepare? Which it's a very valid point. I get it, but we have to stop putting these. Look, Nick Saban's a great coach, but take away all the 5-star recruits, X and O wise. Is he any different from anyone else? Realistically, come on. I don't think one extra week. He knows what he has with Auburn. Kind of throw out all the numbers, the stats. You go and play the game. These are two real good football teams. They do the same things well. It's going to be a war. Donnie, you know that.
Yeah, a funny point on this too. I like to give some public service announcements that you're going to see later in the week, and they're going to say, "Let me get this straight. Alabama beat Mercer 56-0. When you look at Auburn, they only won 24-10. Advantage Alabama."
Does anybody
You know
actually
it's
say
coming.
that?
No,
But
people
I'm
definitely.
just saying somebody's going to use that on there, saying if you just take common opponents, which was Mercer,
People will
We can't
definitely
be
say that.
serious about that, but someone will. It wouldn't shock me someone will. Not in this society of
I
2017.
like it. Yeah,
Not
I mean,
even.
when you just look at Auburn up and down the schedule, I mean, they put teams away. Yeah, they lost at LSU. They had a huge lead in that game. Let it lose. Also, it's no shame. Game 2, losing at Clemson 14-6. Pretty good football team. They're battle tested, which is what I really like. When you look at these teams, you say, yeah, they do have 2 losses. 2 tough road losses. Now you're at home. It's going to be a great game, which it usually is every year. So I'm looking forward to it.
Amen.
Hey guys, good Iron Bowl talk here. It is rivalry weekend. We got a bunch of games on Friday, even Thursday night, the Egg Bowl. Just gonna read a couple games off to you, and let's go around the horn if anything's catching your eye and you want to throw it out there. I'll tell you this right off the bat. I mean, rivalry weekend, a lot of big underdogs here. Ole Miss catching 15. We also got. I'll just read a couple off here. We got Georgia Tech catching doubles plus 11. Washington State plus 10 in the Apple Cup. What about Will Muschamp catching 2 touchdowns against Clemson? We know Clemson struggled their last 2 times on the road. They went up to Syracuse. We know what happened there. Also, NC State kind of had them on the ropes for a bit. And then we just touched on the Auburn as home dogs. I'm kind of feeling the home dog, kind of underdog in general in the rivalry game. Let's just go around the horn. Anything catching your guys' eye? Ian, you want to start us off?
There's a couple that interest me from the rivalry set of games. Uh, is there really incentive, as much as I've liked this team most of the season, is there incentive for NC State to pummel North Carolina here? And North Carolina has perked up a little bit. You're talking about teams that are not good, but have perked up and are giving you that decent effort to end the season. North Carolina's given you that. Elliott at quarterback's been better than anybody they've had before. Surratt or Harris, who are not great. He's at least given them a little something. He's got that little mobility element to him. He's got a little bit of an ability to run with it as well. And he's negated the turnovers, which plagued North Carolina early in the season. He's done a good job protecting the football, and he's been good enough at the quarterback spot. They had a bye week late in the season that seemed to give them a little bit extra energy here. This has been an underdog-dominated series. This has been a road team dominated series recently between North Carolina and NC State. I'm looking at the heels there, plus the points. I think they're a team that hasn't given up. NC State, I'm starting to see them wear down a bit. They lost to Wake Forest last week. They were in the conversation for ACC championship for a little bit earlier on. That's not there now. It's just a question of, is that team really ready to put their pedal to the metal enough to win that game by that kind of margin against North Carolina team that's still fighting the good fight, that had a ton of injuries earlier in the season, but they're playing through it. So kind of like North Carolina, kind of like Washington State too, against Washington. I mean, this Washington team, you look at them from a point spread perspective lately, it's not been great. I mean, their covers were against Oregon without Justin Herbert. Burmeister was the quarterback that day. He's terrible. He's absolutely inept at the quarterback spot if you've watched him play. UCLA is a sieve defensively, so I don't give you much credence to covering against them. And other than that, 17.5 at Arizona State, you lost that game outright. At Stanford, favored by a touchdown, you lost that game outright. You never even came close to sniffing a point spread cover at home against Utah last week. 33-30 win, 17.5-point favorites. You've been bounced from the Pac-12 championship race. I know you can play spoiler here and do damage to Mike Leach and company in Washington State here, but I mean, I'm very, very much baffled that Washington's laying a full 10 here in this football game. Very much so. I'm looking at Washington State and North Carolina, the 2 rivalry games that really stand out to me. And if you didn't see it, watch Mike Leach's take on weddings and how dreadful they are for the groom. He had a great rant on that. It was posted all over Twitter, on YouTube. Mike Leach talking about weddings. It is gold. It is classic. That's why he's one of my favorite coaches in college football. He's entertaining and he tells you the truth whether you want to hear it or not.
Ian, great breakdown. I saw you post that on Facebook. And guys, over 200 people watching right now. We really appreciate it. Let us know in the chat box if you like the new time. And also, please give us a thumbs up, the like button. It helps us out a lot getting the word out. But big man, what's catching your eye with rivalry weekend in college football?
Yeah, by the way, with Leach, he's a guy that he's very much no one else is like him, and that's why you have to love him. He's a regular guy, a lot like us, and he'll admit it. You know, he'll talk about weddings, and he was totally right. I've never been married, but I have to admit, my sister runs a wedding venue, and I've heard of and Donnie. I mean, tell me your wedding wasn't like that, Donnie. I mean, that had to you had to have or any of you guys, Drew, you're married. I mean, it had to bring back memories. I feel like he was totally right. But with what Ian said, there were so many great rivalry matchups. I think there's one that I'm kind of intrigued by. I like Old Miss, frankly. I've liked this team all year. I know they've had so much strife with this group, and Shea Patterson's out, but Jordan Tamu has been real good for this team. And you essentially have to look at this and say, well, they can't go to a bowl game because of self and the sanctions they have. This is their bowl game. This is an absolutely gigantic game in the state of Mississippi, Magnolia State, as they call it. I'm one to think they can hang around inside this number. I don't know if they'll win the game, but there's definitely plenty of motivation. This is the game I feel like they circle on their calendar, especially with no bowl game. This is the bowl game, the Egg Bowl. It's an interesting game. It's really the only college game on Thanksgiving. I'm one to think they can stay within this number. Tamu has been real good. The receivers have been fantastic all year for this group. I really like Ole Miss in the next couple of years. I think they'll become healthy. They'll get themselves a coach in there, and I think that program will start to really turn around. I'm one to think they can stay within the number. I mean, it's pretty heavy. I do like Ian's points about Washington State. Many know I've enjoyed this program over the years, and Washington seems to do weird things to mess games up. They were lucky to win that game last week. Kyle Whittingham gave that game to them on a silver platter, calling a timeout for no reason apparently. I have to agree with Ian on Washington State, but I like Ole Miss in that game, catching all those points.
Big man, is Old Miss, are the sanctions going to hold them down for like another couple of years? I haven't followed that too closely. Do you know?
I haven't read into them totally, but I do know that they're not able to go to a bowl game this year, and that was the apparent thing with the program initially, and why I liked them this year, because if you read stuff out of the program, they were notified about it, and basically they had nothing to play for this year, but I think they still put forth an effort. They lost their quarterback and still were able to make it a decent season. I mean, they're bowl eligible. With a win, even though they can't go to one. So I think that's pretty extraordinary. With no real leader at coach, a quarterback injury, I think for a record they played pretty well. We'll see how it goes, but their team I have my eye on with Shea Patterson. I really like him a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Egg Bowl breakdown, big man. And I actually haven't seen the Mike Leach thing. I just saw you posted, Ian, so I'll have to go watch it after. Kind of excited about it. But I will tell you this, Donnie. I have a lot more fun at other people's weddings than I did at my own wedding. It was just kind of awkward saying hi to everybody. Felt like I had to do a lot of things. But Donnie, do you feel the same way? And what are your thoughts in rivalry weekend?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's a lot of stress and it's a lot of money coming out of your pocket. I got a destination wedding, so it's footing a lot of the bill for that on Miami Beach. But the one good thing, the wife surprised me with a Philadelphia Eagles helmet cake during the reception, so everything was all good after that moment. And then you have a couple drinks in you and get a little bit sloppy. So it was a lot of fun, but you're right. But if we're looking at rivalry week here, I like to take a lot of the capping out of the equation. I don't like to go back and say, last 15 years, these two teams played well, or even earlier back into the season, because numbers sometimes don't tell the whole story. I got 3 spots here, which I really like. One, not so much a rivalry, but a good spot. And we'll make it quick here. 131, 132. It's going to be Miami and Pittsburgh going up. Now, the question in this football game is, South Florida boys, 3 straight big wins at home. Now we're going on the road. And we're not talking about playing at 75, 80 degrees anymore. You're probably going to playing in the mid-30s and a 12 o'clock start, which I always like to look at. The big game atmosphere at Pitt really isn't going to be there. And what does Miami really have to play for at this point? They have to play to win the football game. No style points. You saw the last updates their number 2 overall. As long as they keep winning, they're not going to drop out of the top 4 no matter what happens. 1-point win versus Pitt, 1-point win versus Clemson. They're showing up in the national championship playoffs. That's not going to matter there. So you're looking at 13.5. I think Pittsburgh might be a pretty good spot there. So on the flip side of that, let's stay in the ACC. 197, 198, Clemson, South Carolina. It's like the Super Bowl for Clemson coming in. We can ruin Clemson's season if we knock them off. What's Clemson's perspective here? Yes, it's a rivalry game. Folks, let's win by 1 point. Why? Because if we win by 1 point this week and we beat the Hurricanes by 1 point, we're in the national playoff picture. And you're looking at that football game. It's 14. You have Miami at that 13.5. You have Clemson at that 14 level. These two teams know going into this football game and both going on the road saying the only objective here is no longer to run up the score. It's let's just escape with the win. It's just as good as a blowout victory. And the third one let's bring out here, because forget about who's better, who's capping, who's doing what. Old Dominion, Middle Tennessee State, 191, 192. Why? Both of these football teams have 5 wins. The winner gets the 6 wins. You go to a bowl game. And at these lower level type programs, the bowl is just like the Super Bowl as well. You also have 12.5 points Middle Tennessee State is laying. Do I think Middle Tennessee State is better? But yes, the objective in this bowl game, or this game, is to win by 1 point and get to a bowl. You're not playing for a national championship. I would lean on the points in all 3 situations, just to some really good spots they line up in.
Donnie, I like it, man. South Carolina, they're 8-3. Will Muschamp's doing something there. Ian or Big Man, you like this game too? You like the Gamecocks?
They haven't
I
lost
actually
by
got
more than 14 points this season either, South Carolina. Their biggest margin of defeat was Georgia by 14 on the road. So, you're talking about a South Carolina team to lose by more than 14 when they haven't lost by more than 14 all year. So there's an angle to be made. And Bentley's getting better. The quarterback is starting to play a little bit better. He's moved the ball offensively a lot better in recent weeks. So that's a positive sign. Like I say, in these rivalry games, especially when you're talking about double-digit chalk, I am not going to be making too many cases to lay double-digit chalk in these rivalry scenarios. I'm just not. It's usually dog or pass in a lot of these games for me. And Clemson, South Carolina is another one of those games where I'd be looking at the dog or nothing at all.
Yeah, I thought when Debo Samuel went out for Georgia or for South Carolina, I thought, and for a week or two after, their offense really hurt themselves. But they figured it out. They found a way to move forward, and yeah, they're starting to build something back there again. I mean, we know they're a football school. They had to go through some hard times, but this is a huge game. I mean, you can write your season. Not that you haven't written your season, but you can end your season and go to a bowl on a high note by putting a hurt. I hope they do, because Clemson's kind of irritating anymore. Dabo Sweeney having to look at his stupid face, that laugh, and it's just annoying. I'd love to see South Carolina beat them up. But one other game, guys, that I was interested in. It's kind of a weird number too. I mean, I don't know that I understand this much. This Nevada UNLV game. I mean, the line's sitting at 3.
Again.
Yeah, why is UNLV getting 3 here? I mean, Nevada has been
I agree.
impressive, and this just
Yep.
this just looks like a weird one. I mean, Nevada's played well. I mean, they definitely improved from what I thought they'd be. But I mean, UNLV has a shot to go bowling here, in a season that's been marred by the shooting out there, and the loss to that loss early in the year to Howard University. They've been a great road team. This is a big time rivalry type of game. I mean, why is Nevada a favorite here?
Here's the one caveat to that game, and it's the one concern I have. And if I'm betting that game, I'm totally on the UNLV side as well, +3. But I saw UNLV last week against New Mexico, a lifeless, struggling, reeling New Mexico team, and they kept keeping that New Mexico team in the game and did everything they could to hand that game to New Mexico on a silver platter. And they're very fortunate they got that late touchdown drive from the quarterback there, Rogers, late in that game to drive UNLV down the field and win it. The concern for me is UNLV trying to make a bowl game, get bowl eligibility, players that are not used to this kind of pressure, this kind of environment. It's still a rivalry game. I'm concerned a team like UNLV that's not used to winning and does not have a great culture of winning. You make a play to lose the game late rather than making a play to win the game late. There's no denial. I'd rather have UNLV here in this game, but that is a concern in the back of my mind I've got heading into this game. Does UNLV have the poise to step up and get the job done?
I got to say, and that's a great point with the whole winning culture that Sanchez is building. But I feel like he'll definitely coach them up in this game. That is the concern, and the concern is, can they win a game like this? They're not really, like you said, adjusted to winning. They don't do it often, but I don't know. I thought the game was an interesting spot, but I have to read Tony Soprano's comment here on the chat box. The great Tony Soprano's in here, and I have to say, first of all, I hope you're well, Eugene. Good to see you. But he's saying his Thanksgiving dinner is going to consist of Donnie. Listen to this: little antipasto, followed by the
Mhm.
lasagna bolognese with the sausage and peppers, little cannoli on the side. I mean, then you get to the macaroni probably later. What a nice meal Carmela cooked up for Tony,
Yeah, and
AJ,
then
and
and then Jeff,
Meadow. Sounds
you
like a
roll that over to Christmas. We'll have a little bit of the seven fishes out there. We'll enjoy.
the seven fish is the best. How can you
Manje.
not love that? Mangia bello. It's fucking great. How can you not love the New Jersey holiday? The best.
Guys, that's a good way to end college football talk. We can well, I'm sure we'll hit on it with best bets, but does anybody have anything quick to throw out college football that you might have missed here?
Wait till the end.
All right,
Yeah,
good
I
stuff,
would
guys.
do a
Hey,
nice little bet on fade on that on NCAA football, but there's only one game left, so it's not really betting and fading too much of teams anymore at this point. So I'll leave it alone.
Right.
We got to ask Tony
all right.
Soprano. Is AJ still into drums and doing all that stuff? Huh?
No, he was in the mental institution late. Hopefully, he
Right.
got himself turned around. By
Yeah,
the way,
hopefully.
Tony, who are you on this weekend? You're usually a good mush. We can fade. Who are you on, Tony? You don't usually win very often.
Hey, we got some college basketball talk coming up with Big Man on campus. But first, let's go 60 seconds with Ian Cameron. Talk anything Canadian sports, whatever you want. Hopefully, a little song and dance, Ian. Go for it, bud.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder how the strip joint's doing there too with for Tony. But anyway, that's another
Bada
story.
bing.
We've got bada bing, exactly. Grey Cup this Sunday, CFL. We've got a good one. Calgary, Toronto. We're just gonna mention briefly what the current line is of that. It's pretty much -7 across the board. Although now 6.5 showing at Heritage and Chris. So some Argos money coming in. The total sitting about 52.5, 53, pretty much across the board. If I can get a full 7 with Toronto, I'd probably lean to that side. But my stronger opinion's the over in that game. I mentioned that on the CFL show yesterday. Grey Cup games usually have trended over the total recently. You've got two teams that haven't been able to run the football. Well, actually, they have. Toronto has in particular, but Calgary and Toronto have stopped the run very well this season. So I'm convinced it's going to be on the arm of both quarterbacks to win this game. Bo Levi Mitchell for Calgary, Ricky Ray for Toronto, both of which had pretty good football games last week, good performances. And the weather shouldn't be too bad in Ottawa. You've got to look at the weather this time of year. Ottawa, Ontario, late November. You could get wind, you could get snow. It's going to be cloudy, no precipitation, light wind. It's not really going to impede offenses very much, the weather at least. Maybe the defenses will, but it doesn't look like the weather will. I think we see points in that game. Toronto, 24 plus points in 8 straight games. They've been scoring. Calgary should be able to make plays against Toronto's still somewhat suspect defense. So I think we see points in a very fun and exciting Grey Cup on Sunday.
All right, good stuff, Ian. And we got NFL talk coming up in just a minute. But first, let's get to the college hardwood. And we got to start it off with Mr. College Basketball himself, red hot on the college basketball slate at Jeff Nadeau on Twitter. What are you thinking, man?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting games today. We all know what the story is. I mean, tournaments galore, making sure you're doing your homework and knowing where these games are played. Case in point tonight, up in Reading, Pennsylvania, LaSalle hosting Miami, Florida. A lot of people are probably asking, why the hell are they playing this game in Reading, Pennsylvania? Both these teams, LaSalle's an hour away, Miami's many states away. Lonnie Walker, the All-American guard for Miami, grew up in Reading. They're playing a home game at the Sovereign Center up in Reading. So this is an interesting capping scenario. You have two teams, neutral court, in a stadium where Lonnie Walker played at. He must have a lot of pull down at Miami. We all know he does. That's an interesting capping standpoint there. Where how the team's going to be able to deal with that. That's kind of weird and random. So knowing those sort of things is very important. As far as what I'm on today, I haven't decided just yet. I don't normally mention and play a lot of these early games. One thing I do know is the Alabama Crimson Tide are a very good basketball team. That's a team going forward that I think people need to wake up on. Kentucky struggled out of the gate. Their cohesion is just not there. It'll get back, but with Michael Porter Jr. going out for the year, with that whole thing there, I think Alabama has a real chance to do some damage this year in the SEC. Colin Sexton is, um, to me, the best point guard in the country as a freshman. He is absolutely fantastic. That was a huge win last night for them against Texas Arlington. Texas Arlington's one of the better mid-major teams. They were able to come back in that game, poise-wise, and win that one. That's a huge win, and Sexton was important in doing that. So for me, Alabama's real intriguing, and Florida as well. I really like both those teams coming out of the Southeastern Conference. Florida is really good. They're a team that I'm excited about too. But it's a pretty open segment, Drew. I could go for probably another hour on this. I don't want to bore people, but I'll have some stuff coming up. Looking forward to a couple games today that I have my eye on.
No, no, good stuff, big man. And just to follow up, do you think the SEC in general is becoming a better basketball conference, or is just kind of like a one-off thing where a couple teams are better
No,
this
I
year?
No, I think it's a really good conference. And, people, over the years that it hasn't been. I mean, Mizzou has been really poor and, teams like Ole Miss and Vandy and Mississippi State have been bad. But you look at the whole way down this conference, really till you get to LSU, who, preseason was picked to finish last. LSU has really improved. Will Wade's done a great job there, bringing in Tremont Waters and transfers. Georgia's, kind of coming back a little bit. They'll come back. South Carolina made that run last year. Every team in this conference can beat you on a given day. Texas A&M's very good. This is a stacked conference. It's one of the toughest in the country, if you ask me. I think it's right up there, top three, hardest this year in the country. Every team is going to give you a great game. Every team has a player that you love to watch. I think it's a great conference for basketball. All of a sudden.
Okay, well, good stuff, big man. Ian, do you have any follow-up college basketball wise, real quick?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting start to the season. That was a very good gutty performance by Texas Arlington last night against that Alabama team, and that was following a nice win against BYU. And then conversely, I'm kind of wondering about BYU at this stage. I mean, you had that bad, or not bad loss because Arlington's a good team, but you still get drubbed in your home court, and then you really struggled to pull away from Niagara last night in that game. I mean, Niagara was leading that game with about 14 minutes to go second half before they pulled away. So I'm wondering if BYU, I never did think before the season BYU was on St. Mary's or Gonzaga's level in the West Coast Conference this season compared to where they've been in years past. And I'm not convinced they're on that level after what I've seen so far from the BYU Cougars. But how about this Notre Dame team as well last night? Great performance. If they play a modicum of defense, and we've seen that now throughout this Maui Invitational so far from the Notre Dame team, guys, Ponzi Colson, Matty Farrell, it's a veteran, Rex Pfluger. Wait till that guy starts to get shooting the ball better. I mean, once they get him going, and he struggled a little bit with his Jimmy to this point of the season, that's going to make Notre Dame even more dangerous and more potent. Very good basketball team, no question about that. Mike Bray, year in, year out, coaches that team at a very high level. A very good win last night against LSU, setting up a titanic Maui Invitational Championship game tonight. Notre Dame versus Wichita State. That is going to be an absolute ton of fun. That is a must-watch for me. I will be watching it. It's a great game. I'm looking forward to seeing it. No betting opinion, but
If
I'm
I
looking
could
forward to seeing it.
Yeah, if I could say one more thing kind of on that with Notre Dame, Temple Gibbs is a kid that I've kind of had my eye on with them. He comes from good stock, Ashton Gibbs. He's a couple brothers that played in college basketball ranks. He's a great player. He had a great game last night. And you're right, Ian. That Maui Invitation, I wanted to say this on the show here today. I think it's one of the better tournaments in basketball. It's an intimate gym. It's not some huge arena. The fans are kind of right on top of you. That's what college is to me. That's so great. Tonight's going to be, like you said, Titanic. I can't wait for this game. Two really good basketball teams going at it. You know, right before Thanksgiving, and this is a great game schematically. I mean, you look at the guard play in this game. I mean, Landry Shamet, Matt Farrell is an amazing matchup. How will Bonzi Colson and kind of the bigs for Wichita, Shaq Morris, how will they play against each other? It's just a fascinating game, and games like this are what I live for. I mean, just trying to break them down. How will this kid play against this player? And it's fantastic. How could I 10:30 Eastern? I mean, it's just beautiful. It's basketball at the highest level. 10:30 at night. I'll be up till 1:30 watching this Titanic matchup out in Hawaii. Fans all over you. It's beautiful. How can I not like
And one of the best in the business, and my fellow Canadian, Danny Schulman, on the call. One of the best.
it?
I love
Amen.
the guy. It's great.
And Jay Billis. Amen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good
that's a
group.
good call. Hey, Big Man, you got me excited, man. Follow Big Man on Twitter at Jeff Nadeau. He's always tweeting during college basketball, maybe a second half play or something. Want to give a shout out to Kyle Hamburg in the chat box, guys. If you're out there, we love seeing what you want to hear. Also, the new time. Let us know if you like it. Kyle's saying this is better than Hollywood Squares. Appreciate that, Kyle. Also saw you saying your Georgia Bulldogs are just waiting in the wings for the winner of this Auburn Alabama game. So interesting take there. But guys, we got.
I was just gonna say
almost-
we've got a Hollywood Squares Brady Bunch thing going on. I feel like I should be looking up like that. Hey, and looking to the side like that, like Brady Bunch, yeah. With the squares.
Who are you?
Also-
You're definitely who was the youngest? What was the youngest kid's name? You kind of look like him a little bit. Bobby. You look like Bobby Brady a little bit.
I look like him, but I think I'm third in age of this group. I think Drew is slightly older than me. Donnie is, but I'm younger. I'm older than Jeff, so I think I'm third in the age group here.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely the youngest kid here. So, but yeah, you do kind of look like Bobby Brady a little bit. I think.
Well, that's not terrible. Yeah.
All right, Brady Bunch to the NFL. Great segue there, guys. Let's start off with the bet on fade teams in the National Football League. Donnie, right side, get in here, man. Who you looking to bet on or fade?
I used it last week and I'll use it again. It was an easy victory. New England Patriots over the Oakland Raiders. I mean, who's stepping in front of that freight train right now? That is the New England Patriots. And it looks like the betting public in Las Vegas bracing for impact as well, laying a 17 as a home favorite versus the Miami Dolphins. If I'm looking for a bet on team that has it all going right now and a little bit scary heading down the stretch playing their best football of the season, right now it would be the New England Patriots.
All right, New England. Big Man or Ian, you guys agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever disagree with New England. I mean, they look like all of us. They're always going to be the class of the AFC. But as far as a fade team, I mean, listen. I mean, it's truly mind blowing how bad the Oakland Raiders are on defense. But they finally made a move yesterday and cut Ken Norton. I think it's about 5 years too late. But yeah, well, do we see any semblance from that group? What a disappointing team they've been. I mean, I think we all thought. I mean, coming into the year, healthy offense, Amari Cooper, Derek Carr, they have a little stable running backs, a defense that we were, I guess, kind of excited for with Khalil Mack. I mean, how just bad have they been? I mean, last week just he only scored 8 points against the Patriots, and you really were sunned in that game from the beginning. I mean, you arrogantly walk into that game acting like you're walking into a home game. You don't prepare at all for the elevation or the exposure to the air or anything there. Patriots worked you in that game. You get crushed by the Bills a couple weeks ago. It's just a bad team. They're not well coached. Their offensive coordinator is a complete idiot. Their head coach, for some reason, always gets love because he made 2 fourth-down calls one year and he's Black Jack Del Rio. They're just overrated. Derek Carr, where's Amari Cooper? I mean, he's literally disappeared this year. They're a really bad football team, but still only second in the AFC West. But defensively, they're a complete joke.
Ian, any follow up real quick to that?
Yeah, two bet against Arizona Cardinals. It might be time to throw them in the group of teams that you just worry where they are mentally now. That's a bad loss against Houston. Tom Savage, who's done nothing against you, against anybody, goes up and down the field all game against Arizona. Where are they mentally now? That's a game you probably have to win. I didn't like the body language on that Cardinals team. They're a bet against team for me moving forward. Blaine Gabbert actually perked them up a little bit offensively, but their defense just fell apart in that game. I don't like what I see from Arizona. I think I got to throw Seattle a little bit into the bet against category. I'm a little concerned with what I'm seeing from them defensively. They've been ripped apart by injuries. We know that in the secondary. It's a defense that from the beginning this season hasn't been as good. The offensive line just continues not to get any better. I mean, here's Russell Wilson again running for his life and, of course, turning right into a sack with no offensive line. Sack fumble the other night against the Atlanta Falcons on Monday night. That was a big turning point in that game, a big reason that allowed Atlanta to win that. So I've got concerns about Seattle moving forward as a bet against material. Bet on could be the Carolina Panthers and potentially this week against the New York Jets. You've got a Carolina team I think that's starting to turn things around. You like the way Cam Newton's played lately. They're 7-3 on the season. They're in a good situation here, off a bye week. They haven't played since that Monday night game, 45-21 against Miami. They're well rested, well ready. Those late season buys in the NFL, they're worth their weight in gold. It's big to get a bye this late in the season. Carolina's got that. I know the Jets have been scrappy. The Jets have been competitive. They're also off a bye, but I think Carolina, the better team, not a crazy number to lay with them on the road here, and a team I'll be looking to support not only this week but moving forward. Carolina, that defense is well playing very good right now, along with the improvements from Newton in the offense.
Yeah, the Panthers have been surprising. Guys, any more bet on or fade information you want to throw out there before we break down the marquee game?
Yeah, one fade team out there, and you've seen the last 6 weeks. It has not gotten better at any point at any time. That's for the Denver Broncos. If you want to use a little case study in NFL action, what happens when you pull the plug and go to a quarterback nobody really wants to play football? Let's take a look at the Buffalo Bills last week as they traveled out to play the Los Angeles Chargers. I was on that football game, one of the easier games you're ever going to be able to bet on. A quarterback that's not ready for prime time action heading into a Lions den. Now, has Oakland played good football? Is Oakland a good football team? No, but you're going to throw Paxton Lynch out there completely unprepared, injured, not injured, faking an injury. We don't really want to put him in there. I think Brock Osweiler's a better option for us. The Denver Broncos, who actually think that, you're going to Paxton Lynch. It ends bad at this point because the locker room has already given up. And now you're going to say, you're not getting back your Aaron Rodgers of your football team. You can galvanize and make a run. You're putting Paxton Lynch out there to see what he actually has. And in the NFL, when you're playing to see what your football team actually has, you usually get buried. Bury the Denver Broncos.
All right, good breakdown, guys, in the NFL. Let's break down the game here. We got the New Orleans Saints versus the LA Rams. Looks like the Rams are laying -2.5 pretty much across the board on SBR odds. Over under of 53. Donnie, you want to start us off on this game?
It's a great football game. I know last week we talked a lot about the game that was the Rams and also with the Minnesota Vikings, two really good, evenly matched teams, same in this situation. Sometimes in the NFL, one team really needs it more than the other one. Disappointing effort last week for the Rams as they went and played Minnesota. No shame in that, though. I mean, everybody goes into Minnesota's going to have a tough time. You also saw early in the season who else went in there. The same team they're playing. New Orleans Saints got beat around playing the Minnesota Vikings. Going to happen. Very good football team. Tough environment to play in that dome. Now they're going to go back out to L.A. The one thing that we always like to look at when we bet against or bet for Drew Brees, guys, is when he goes on the road. You want him to go on the road in the Northeast in a wind-swirling tunnel. You want him playing like that Giants game atmosphere last week versus the Kansas City Chiefs with 30 to 40-mile-an-hour winds and force him to throw the football. Not the strongest arm and always loves to be accurate. The wind can push it around. It's not going to be any of that here in Los Angeles this weekend. The one thing I do look at is when the New Orleans Saints go up against football teams that can really hum on offense and play well. Now, the Rams didn't play well last week, but that's more of an aberration there. Played a really good defensive football team on the road in the dome, tough environment, and Jared Goff pretty much got his comeuppance there. But coming back home here, the one thing I am interested to see is how well the Rams are going to be without Robert Woods, who's played really well at wide receiver. I think McVay is going to be able to scheme and play a really good football game and, get that team ready to play, being a home game for the Rams. But if you look at New Orleans coming in, they're a good football team. They should have lost last week. They should have got pounded. Their MO during the season, if they're playing a team that's not really, offensively ready to go, the a la the Chicago Bears of the world, and I don't have the actual schedule up in front of me, but the last 4 to 5 weeks until they played Kirk Cousins, who can throw the football a little bit, they have really rolled and then struggled against that team. I think Jared Goff's going to put up some points in this football game. If I'm looking from an overall, side perspective, don't really like it too much. I would lean towards the home team Rams. But that over-under sitting at 53, 52.5. I think there's going to be some points in this game. Alex Okafor getting injured last week for the New Orleans Saints. That's another pass rusher down, a little bit banged up in their secondary. I see some points in this football game.
Donnie's NFL analysis. It's a tough follow, but Ian Cameron, what do you got to say about it?
No, it is, and he's right about the secondary. It's been banged up. They haven't had Bro all season, and I've talked about many times how they've missed him. Lattimore's banged up. Vaccaro, the safety's banged up. We talked about, Donnie talked about Okafor as well, torn Achilles out for the season. So there's issues with New Orleans, but I have to give New Orleans credit. I mean, they were almost left for dead last week against Washington. And then they had that fourth quarter rally, tied the game, late 2 touchdowns, and then they win in overtime 34-31. Come back and beat the Redskins, who gave a game effort with Kirk Cousins, who played a very good football game on the road against the Saints in that one. Saints are not an easy team to go against. Obviously, they're an underdog here on the road, despite the fact that they're on an 8-game winning streak. So you're talking about an team on an 8-game winning streak now in the role of an underdog. That's not an easy situation or scenario to bet against. But I'm not willing to throw out the LA Rams for that performance against Minnesota last week. Yeah, 24-7. They got outgained by 197 yards. Jared Goff, for one of the few times this season, and that Ram offense got shut down completely. But that's in Minnesota, that tough environment at US Bank Stadium, loud place, great elite defense, one of the best in the NFL as far as I'm concerned, Minnesota. So I'm not willing to just all of a sudden say the roof's going to cave in on the Rams. The spot lines up for them. A bounce back effort at home. New Orleans off a thrilling, rousing, come from behind win. Do they fall a little bit flat coming off that kind of comeback? I'm in the camp with Donnie here. If I'm playing this game from a side perspective, I'd lean Rams. I'm not ready to throw them in the trash can after one bad game against a good team on the road. On the flip side, I'm also looking over the total, but I was hoping for something a little better than 53.5. That's a real high number. I was expecting maybe high 40s, maybe 50, 53.5, higher than my number came on this total. But even though I was leaning over, so I'm not sure the value's there to get involved.
Guys, we got best bets coming right up. Big man, any thoughts on this game in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, these guys pretty much broke it down to a T. I got to say I agree with them, though. I mean, New Orleans coming off that, big time win, a game that I don't think they deserved really, but Washington handed it to them on a silver platter late. And you have to ask yourself, now you got to go on the road, and face a team in LA off a bad loss. But we know offensively, they're very dynamic and very good. They're at home. And guys, I'm still waiting. I gotta feel at some point New Orleans goes back to looking like they normally do on defense. Let's look at the last couple opponents they played over this 5 or 6 game stretch. Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers, Chicago, Tampa, Buffalo, and then they face a pretty good offense in Washington and give up 31 points. So are they valid defensively? Yeah, they've played good, but I want to see them against this team. If they play well and win this game and hold the Rams to 17 points, I think this is the big test for them really right now at this point. They still have a tough division to get through, which is going to be interesting. You got 3 tough games coming up. We're going to find out realistically, guys, if New Orleans is really right on the Eagles' heels as a real legit contender in the NFC, or they're just a fraud. We're going to find that out in the next couple weeks, if you ask me. You got the Rams, Carolina, and at Atlanta. That's going to decide whether New Orleans is a real life contender or not, or just a fraud. And I got to be real with you. I think they're going to be a total fraud. I think they're going to go 1-2 in this stretch, and I think they're going to go away.
Guys, great breakdown there in the NFL. Want to wish all the watchers, the listeners, first of all, thank you. We've got almost 250 people watching on Rivalry Weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to you from the SBR family here. We really appreciate you guys chiming in on the chat box, also giving the thumbs up, the like button. It does help us out. Guys, we got best bets coming up right now. Also, anything else you want to say about the roundtable in general, new time, anything like that? Let's just go right around the horn. Ian Cameron, find him on Twitter at Babano. What you got for best bets, man?
Yeah, well, first of all, before I get to best bets, yeah, the roundtable is now going to be Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. We're excited about the new time slot. It's a little different, shakes up our day. We're still going to have the same great discussion, yeah, every week, so make sure you tune in for that. Ice Guys, I'm hosting that. We have our last CFL show next week after the Grey Cup, so that's still ongoing. I'll be doing some other pre-taped videos starting in the next few days, certainly by next week here for SBR, so that'll be interesting as well. You're going to want to check that out. Best bets for this week. I'm going to go back to one of those rivalry games in college football that we talked about earlier in the show for best bet. I'm going to look at the Washington State Cougars here, plus 10 against the Washington Huskies. It's a situation where I just think it's too many points to be giving Washington State when Washington State, to me, is the better of these, has the potential to show that they're the better of these two teams. Now, they're on the road, obviously. They laid a complete and utter egg in the Apple Cup last year, but I'm going to trust that Mike Leach and this Cougars team has grown from that, have learned from that loss, have learned from that experience, and are more equipped to handle the spotlight of trying to punch their ticket to the Pac-12 championship game with a win here in this Apple Cup rivalry game. I think Washington State threatens to win this game outright, let alone cover the number. We'll look Washington State plus 10. And I don't like what I see from Browning. Browning's been up and down. Browning's been erratic at quarterback lately for the Huskies down the stretch. Luke Falk, I think, is going to try to make amends for a terrible game against this Huskies defense last year in Pullman. I think he's going to have the chance to do that. We're going to look Washington State plus 10 for my best bet this week.
All right, Ian on the Cougs in the Apple Cup plus the points. Donnie Rightside, find him on Twitter at RightSideVP. Donnie, what you got for us?
Yeah, I've been yelling for this football game for a while, been trying to set it up all year long, and it's finally here this weekend. And one of those rivalry games or a big game that's running a little bit, under the wire for me, 137, 138. That's UCF and USF, the Battle of Florida here to see who's going to get the right to play in the conference championship game. If you look at the game overall, you say, oh my God, look at the points, minus 11. Look, have you seen South Florida? Look at Flowers. He's amazing. This is the game I finally circled the wagons for. I've watched enough of USF this year. I've bet enough of USF this year. We all know the coaching disparity between Scott Frost and Charlie Strong. It's enormous at this point. Flowers, a great quarterback for college football, but if you ask him to throw the football, he just can't do it. If you're looking at this game and just saying it's a lot of points, I'm just going to roll with it, I'll take double digits. I get that, but I'm looking at the opposite side here. USF, to me, even though they have one loss, has been a major disappointment. UCF, to me, is completely the better football team. Great quarterback, great offense, great defense, great coaching staff, and at home. If you want to take a look at some snapshots between UCF and USF on the season, let's look at UCF at home this year. It's pretty much a common denominator here. 61-17 over FIU, 40-13 over Memphis, where everybody thought that football game was going to be a really close one. ECU, 63-21. Austin Peay, a game short and three-quarter game, 73-33. UConn, 49-24. Flip it over to the other side, USF, when they're going on the road. Let's say, forget about even the scores. Let's see how much testing there was for USF on the road. San Jose State, ECU, Tulane, and UConn. Not exactly four environments, pressure cookers that were going to push them to the limit. UCF is going to win this football game, and UCF is going to win by 2 touchdowns because they're going to shut down that one play, the read option for USF, and they're going to score whatever they want on offense. I know USF has a good defense, but they haven't seen anything like UCF. UCF's going to be ready for this football game. 2 touchdown margin. Give me the Knights.
I don't know what Donnie's talking about. How can anyone not see that South Florida road slate as anything but a murderer's row? Holy mackerel. It's just a murderer's row of opponents.
Coaching is just going to catch up in this football game. I've watched USF coast all year long. It's finally going to catch up to them in a big way. UCF's ready for this football game. They're going to put them away.
Oh, Frost could completely school strong here in a spot like this. I agree. I'm not in the business of fading UCF, so I'm with Donnie. Hope he cashes.
Donnie, in the war on I-4, he's on UCF minus the points. Big man on campus. What you got for best bets, bud?
I feel like I want to just bet the other side in that game just to do it, but because I've mentioned Scott Frost, but no, they played great this year, and I'll root for Donnie. No, I'm actually going to go to I'll give one out today just to kind of go against the grain a little bit. I'll go to Champions League today. Big matchup. Juventus hosting Barcelona. Juventus is the side I root for, but right now they're not playing well. Defensively, they've been very leaky, and if you follow this group, you know Juventus is normally a very good stalwart defensively, but here's what's going on right now. They're whining and complaining about not getting to the World Cup. And at some point we got to, wake up and, put on our cleats and go out and play soccer at some point. It's time to move on. You didn't make the World Cup, Juventus. Stop whining and get out and play. Buffon, you're properly rested. But I'm not sure they can go out and do it in this kind of match. Barcelona's arguably the best team in the world. Lionel Messi is an amazing talent, as we know. They're just way there's so many goal options in this game. Paulo Dybala, Messi, Luis Suarez, Higuain. There's so many great strikers in this game. I don't know that we're going to see a 1-0 type of match. I think it's kind of a basketball match here. I think Barcelona could put 2 on the board. I really think Juventus can score as well. I'm going to go over 2.5 in this match at minus 105. I just think for Juventus, the time is now. You're 3 points behind with 2 games to go, basically. You need to do something here. If you're going to do it, it's at home. I think they put a goal on the board. I think both these teams score a couple, and this one goes over 2.5. So I'll go over 2.5. Barcelona, Juventus at -105.
All right, good stuff, big man. We got Ian on the Cougs +10 in the Apple Cup. Donnie, War on I-4, UCF minus the points. BMOC on Barcelona, Juventus over 2.5. And I will follow it up with the FAU Owls. Going to lay the wood here, have the only favorite on best bets going against the mighty Charlotte 49ers. Just think Lane Kiffin really pours it on. A lot of people would just kind of, hold out the starters, rest for the championship game there in Conference USA. But going against Charlotte, they just got boat race, gave up 66 points against Southern Miss. I think FAU can kind of put in that type of game against them. So I will lay the 21.5 right now on SBR odds. So guys, that's it for best bets. We're up against it time-wise. We really appreciate you watching. Please give us a thumbs up, the like side. For Donnie Right Side, Ian Cameron, Big Man on Campus, I'm Drew Martin. We will see you next Wednesday, 7 a.m. Pacific time.
Well, all